For our deep dive, we're going to do, and this is probably going to be the end, Legalism Part 3. The reason why I want to get into this is because I want to fill in a part that I think needs to be said. Whenever we talk about legalism and grace, and whenever we're going against legalism, you find out that there will almost always be a reaction from certain people. Some people will say things like, so you're all about grace, but you don't love the law of God. It's almost like God's grace and obeying God's commands are on different ends of the spectrum. And then you also have people who really do believe that, who say, because of God's grace, then there's no law. I'm not under anything anymore. Everything's fine because of grace. It's everything. I can do whatever I want because of grace. God doesn't care if I sin because of grace. I can ignore all of God's commands because of grace. That's not true either. That is not a right understanding of grace. And that's the mindset or the teaching called Antinomianism, which says there is no law, antinomia, anti-norms, and no law, anti-law. Meaning, don't tell me what to do. Don't judge me. Only God can judge me, which is a funny thing to say because He will. Some people think, if you keep on teaching about grace, then you don't believe in the law of God. So we've got these two extremes, right? These people who are wary, suspicious of grace, who are saying, I don't really believe that grace thing because we need to have more law, more rules. You're forgiving too many of these bad people. And then the people who think they like it a lot, and they super love it because it lets them keep sinning. And the truth is, both of these people don't understand the grace of God. Both of these mindsets don't treasure the grace of God fully, and they're actually missing out on the tremendous power and benefit and riches of God's grace. Because God's grace does forgive and does make things new and accept all kinds of people, but it also has the tremendous benefit of setting us free from sin and giving us the ability to walk away from it. What are we talking about here? See, some people talk a lot about grace. They react, because there have been, let's admit it, there have been people who have used the word grace flippantly, liberally. There have been Christian teachers, ministers, pastors who have been intentionally vague, because they don't want to get canceled. I don't see the point in going out of your way to just piss people off for I don't know what, But there must come a time that when someone asks you point blank, is this a sin? What does the Bible say about that? You must tell the truth. We can't be vague where the Bible is clear. That is a disservice about the Word of God. And really, when it comes to grace and the law of God, we have to love the law of God. Jesus said, so it's very funny because people like to think that, Jesus, all He did was come to heal people and forgive, He washed feet. He never really confronted anybody. He never really had much rules. Yeah, He did. In fact, Matthew 5:17-20 says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Sometimes people like to talk about Jesus like He just accepted everybody, loved everybody, and didn't challenge anybody to change. He did accept people. He was a friend of sinners. Yet, He challenged people to change. And here's what He says in Matthew. He did not come to abolish. He didn't come here and say, no more rules. Do whatever you want. Sleep with whoever you want to sleep with as long as you love. He didn't say that. Instead, He said, I came to fulfill them. To fulfill the law. And in fact, the succeeding parts of this chapter, He would go on to say, you heard the law say this, but I tell you this. You heard the law say don't murder. I tell you don't even hate. You heard the law say don't commit adultery. I tell you don't even have lust in your heart. It seems like He's not even just letting go of the law, but He's even tightening the screws. He's making it more an issue of our heart. Jesus came to fulfill the law. That's why we need grace. And this mindset, which going back to the amazing grace, portion earlier, where people say, I don't want to be called a wretch. I don't want to be called blind. I don't want to be called lost. I don't need grace. No, no, no. We are wretched, lost, and blind. We cannot reach that law. That's why we need grace. So we need to be clear about what we mean by God's grace. Antinomianism is not the answer. Doing away with the law is not the answer. In fact, anybody who likes to say that I don't really believe in rules, I believe people should be allowed to do whatever they want, that's not really a practical thing, like you can't live your life that way. Like, try stealing from that person. Like, don't do that. But if that person gets stolen from, they're gonna have rules all of a sudden. You're not supposed to steal from me. Why? Because suddenly their relativism has a line. There needs to be a law somewhere. But as Christians, we must distinguish what we mean by the law. I have 3 distinctions here we need to be clear on. Number 1, we must distinguish Old Testament law and New Testament law. What does the Bible say about the Old Testament and the New Testament? And you have both misguided Christians quoting Old Testament passages that don't apply now as if they still apply now. And you've also got non-believers, skeptics, people attacking the faith, throwing Old Testament, well, what about this? Well, don't eat shrimp. It's like, come on, Jesus. The text itself already says Jesus called all foods clean. This is not an argument that holds any water. Second distinction we need to make is between a biblical command and a cultural preference. And I had a good talk with my wife about this, and we were talking about it, and she said to me, sweetheart, you've got to know. And I said, love, why is it that with this person wearing that outfit, it feels okay? With this one, parang I'm worried. I don't want to look, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with her, but with me, with the struggle with lust. And she said, sweetheart, you've got to distinguish what's going on in people's hearts when they choose articles of clothing. Because they could be wearing the same outfit, but someone has a spirit of wanting to attract and draw attention to herself. And make it about her and want people to look at her body that way. And someone might not be doing that. And I realized, it's an internal thing. Now, granted that institutions and offices and schools will have dress codes, that's different. What I'm saying, though, is we need to distinguish that biblical command from a cultural preference. I can't instinctively, automatically, unquestioned, or without knowing you, just drive by, look at an outfit and say, okay, you clearly have something wrong with you. I don't know. Well, no, that's not true. There are some people who are pretty clearly doing it, from a desire to incite lust and seduce or whatever. But there are other people where I don't know that. And you can't make that judgment just that flippantly. Instead, we need to go back to the heart. That's what Jesus was doing. When he said, you've said commit adultery or murder, people were looking for a very clear line in the sand in this act. And Jesus was saying, no, you got to start with the heart, actually. If you hate your brother in your heart, that's what's sinful. If you lust for a woman in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her. Interestingly, with that command, there isn't even anything said there about the person. About, well, she might be wearing something bad. No, it's you. It's to the man that if in your heart you have lust, you're already committing adultery. So we need to distinguish the biblical command with the cultural preference. So New Testament law and Old Testament law, biblical command versus just a preference. And thirdly, we need to distinguish between that famous verse about in not causing anyone to stumble. Romans 14 talks about that. Not causing anyone to stumble. And that's a good principle. It's a great thing to do. You don't want to cause anyone to stumble. But I find that phrase or that charge is used a lot. And it's not having to do with causing people to stumble. But it's about offending the most conservative person in the room. I don't think that's what stumbling means. And I have a post about this on my Instagram account. I'm going to share it in the Telegram group and in the description of this video. But I tell a story there of someone I caused to stumble. And I think stumbling is causing someone who's a young believer from continuing in their faith. Or someone who's about to believe to stop believing in Jesus because of our lifestyle. It's not about offending someone who's a Christian with a totally different set of preferences and just doesn't like that you're doing that. Does that make sense? I believe, for example, that alcoholic drinks are not automatically a sin. Drunkenness is a sin. Alcoholism is a sin. We have to get into the person's heart. Why are we getting into that? Yeah, those are sins. But if you don't want to drink and you don't like drinking, don't. But if you see another believer have a glass of wine, have a beer, and it offends you, just stop following that person. Just unfollow their account. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But to now say that they've stumbled you, I don't think that applies unless you've stopped following Jesus. Now, if it really bothers you and you want to have a talk, then reach out to the person and talk to them. But the whole point of Romans 14 is that as Christians, we need to be able to extend love to one another, even though we have different positions on these issues. So, what is grace about? Is it about lowering the standard? No. It's about lifting us up to the standard. But what is the standard? What the Bible says. Not distinguish between what is only in the Old Testament with what is in the New Testament. With what is truly a biblical command and just a preference. With what is truly causing to someone to stumble or just offending my sensibilities. See, grace really has an effect on our lives. It's supposed to. It's not supposed to cause us to stay sinning and continue in our old lifestyle. There's no effect there. I like the way this quote goes that says, "Run, run, the law commands, but gives us neither feet nor hands. Much better news the gospel brings. It bids us fly and gives us wings." Look at that poem. The law says to run, do this, but doesn't even help you do it at all, right? No feet nor hands. Grace doesn't just tell you to run, it tells you to fly, but it gives you wings. It actually tells you that the standard is higher than you thought it was, more impossible than you thought it was, but it lifts you up to that standard. Grace is not about lowering the standard, it's about lifting us up. God lifting us up to meet His standard. 1 Corinthians 15:10 says, "But by the grace of God, I am what I am, and His grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them," Paul talking about the other apostles, "yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me." See, he really understands the grace of God. The grace of God did not produce lethargy. Oh, okay, there's grace naman pala eh. Tuloy na lang tayo sa nating buhay. May grace. No. Because of the grace of God, there's an effect. Actually, can work harder. I work harder with joy. It's not the striving of running and it's painful. No, I'm flying because that's what the grace of God gives to me. Titus 2:11-14. "For the grace of God that has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, while we wait for the blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave Himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for Himself a people that are His very own, eager to do what is good." That's the effect of grace. It's not an eagerness to do more sin. No, it's that, oh, by the grace of God, I can say no. By the grace of God, I can reject ungodliness. And if that sounds impossible to you right now, if you're saying, "Joe, I don't even know how to stop with my porn addiction. I don't even know how to stop. I don't even know how to stop losing my temper." Exactly. That's why you need grace. That's why I need grace. That's why grace is so amazing. Because it deals with that. It helps us fight sin. See, we need grace so much because we're so messed up. It's just such a part of us to want to sin. And grace is what shakes us out of that. One of my favorite songs is the song "Boasting" by Lecrae. And one of the lines goes, "I rejected His love, grace, kindness, and mercy. Dying of thirst, yet willing to die thirsty. Eternally worthy, how could I live for less? Patiently, you turned my heart away from selfishness. I volunteer for your sanctifying surgery. I know the Spirit is purging me from everything that's hurting me." That's what God's doing. See, that's what sin is. You remember, I love that line, dying of thirst, yet willing to die thirsty. That's what sin is. We know I need water to drink. I don't have water. And it said, I want more salt. That's how broken our life is. You need to rest. You need peace from God. And what are you drawn to do? Binge watch pornography or doom scroll on your phone. Or just idle away on video games knowing this isn't producing what you need and yet you're stuck here. Grace breaks us out of it. Here's my picture in my head of grace and the relationship it has with fighting sin. Imagine with me that we are people who are so reduced to poverty that we have no other option than to eat from the garbage. You're combing through garbage. You're finding stuff people threw away and hoping it's not rotting or stinky enough. And you can't even care about how much germs are in it and how sick it's going to make you. You just need something to fill the hunger inside. That's a life apart from God. That's a sinful life. That's all kinds of drug addiction, sex addiction, alcoholism, social media addiction, all kinds of things. They're just ways for us to stop the hunger we feel on the inside, but it's never going to ultimately satisfy. Now imagine if someone showed up to us and said, hey, guess what? The grace of God is available for you. The grace of God says that the Vikings buffet is open for you. All of the food you can eat, all of the fried food, the nutritious food, the desserts, freshly cooked noodles and soup, freshly made eggs, the grace of God open to you. You can enjoy as much as you want for free right now. Okay? So before the grace of God showed up, we're rummaging for garbage, eating food that's bad for us, making us worse. Someone says there's grace open to you. Go to that buffet. You can eat all you can. In fact, I'll take you there right now. And imagine if you hear that and your response is, great, let me go there now. I don't want this anymore. Why will I eat another minute of this garbage? Because if there's that much food, give it to me, right? Imagine if I said, oh, so that buffet is open for me. Yeah. 24/7. Yeah. And it's free of charge. Yeah. So anytime I can go there and get that food. Yes. Okay. Since it's open, naman pala, you said 24/7, diba? And you said it's available for me at all times. Okay. I think I'll go later. Because I just found a half-eaten siopaw here. Sayang naman to. Yung siopaw na to, alam ko medyo may mold, medyo may uod na siya, pero sayang naman yun. Tinatanggal ko naman yung uod eh. Sayang naman. In fact, baka next week na kasi mukhang may bagong dating. Gusto ko muna makita yung mga bagong dating na yun kasi sayang naman. If I said that, would you think that I really understood the riches of grace that were offered to me? If I was going to stay here for one more minute, one more bite of that, why would you even tolerate this for one more second? With that much available to you. That's the story of the prodigal son, the lost son. He's eating slop of pigs and he says, I could eat better. What am I doing here? My father has better. Now granted, it's not that simple for most of us. The struggle with sin, with addiction, it's compulsive. It's pulling us back. But for many people I know, and even for myself, when I've struggled with this, the statement is, Lord, help me, change me. I don't know why I'm still craving garbage. I'm still craving junk when I know you are the only one who satisfies me. That's grace. And the grace of God teaches us to say no to the garbage, to say no to the ungodly. It gives us a taste of Him bit by bit. And then we realize, Lord, you are way more satisfying. Lord, you are way more fulfilling. Lord, I'm so much happier with you. And there's no guilt. And there's no after effect. There's no hangover. Lord, mas mabuti kang sundan. And if you're dealing with someone who struggles with giving up their sinful habits, you got to go back to grace. Maybe for them, you're dealing with someone who, like this song says, dying of thirst, yet willing to die thirsty. Who can't imagine, they're used to the garbage this world gives. They're used to being treated like garbage because that's all they know. Be patient. The main problem isn't getting them to give up that habit. The main problem is helping them see that there's another way to live, that it doesn't have to be this way. And staying close and loving enough and representing that grace of God to them, representing even the benefits you feel from the grace of God in your life and letting them walk in that as well. So And closing out this whole legalism mini-series, legalism is a spirit, and it's the spirit that's opposite to grace. And grace, in contrast, is not about lowering the standard, but it's about lifting us up to God's standard, where we can enjoy the satisfying riches of all that He has for us. So there, hope this has been helpful for you. If you want to talk about this more, we have a Telegram group. It's in the description. The link's in the description. If you want to talk about it more there, then join the conversation as well. If you want to support this channel, we would be grateful. You can go to buymeacoffee.com and click there. Some people have said they were having problems getting through. Send me a message and let me see how to figure that out. But I've had a friend give already. So yeah, it's working out so far. Also, if you like this content, like, share, subscribe as usual to help push this out. The algorithm will help us find other people who could benefit from it. God bless you. See you in the next one.